friends, my name is Victoria and welcome back to another video. Before we start, to answer your questions, yes, I did get new glasses, and yes, I did get my eyebrows done, and yes, I do look exactly the same. So, since I'm a super original person who does super original things and is not like most people, I am obsessed with The Office. I've seen it like 1,000 times. I own a bunch of merch and books and whatever. These are things you've surely heard before because my previous statement about being original was sarcastic. And to keep on the theme of saying things you've heard before, allow me to tell you one of the reasons I think The Office is such a great show. It's incredibly real. It's built around a simple, relatable concept, work culture, and it showcases surprisingly realistic characters dealing with these somewhat common events in super interesting ways. Now, because these characters are so realistic, they're also all evidently flawed. And I hate to say this because I really do love both so much, but I think one of the reasons I like Parks and Rec just a little bit more than The Office is because the characters make me a little less frustrated. While some are worse than others, fans of The Office tend to have pretty strong opinions on characters they don't like, and this prompted me to search for a list of the most hated Office characters of all time. Now, I was able to find a few of these, I can link some below, and I thought the majority of them were fairly agreeable. Like, I don't like Roy or Charles or Kathy, for example. Like, those weren't hot takes. However, there were a lot of characters I did not expect to see. The general vibe I was getting from the majority of these lists was that everyone hates Gabe Lewis, which is like appalling to me. I was initially going to make this whole video just about Gabe and why these opinions are simply wrong, but I thought I could actually quote-unquote defend a few characters who are perceived this way. Like I said, I know most fans have pretty strong opinions on these guys, so I don't expect you or whoever's watching to agree with me, but if this is something you think you'd be interested in, you can join me. Let's go.
Shut up about the sun! Shut up about the sun!
So since he actually inspired this video, I think we should kick off with Gabe Lewis. Now, I totally understand why people wouldn't love Gabe. As his relationship with Erin developed, it was very obvious that he was a terrible boyfriend, and after the breakup, he was just more creepy and bad. So I'm gonna have different arguments for different characters, but this is definitely a case where I'm not trying to defend him as a person. I'm just kind of surprised by the people who think he's super annoying and don't want to watch his scenes, because I thought he was actually a really great addition to the show. His awkwardness that then transitioned into awkward aggression was so unbelievably funny, and it fit the show's dynamic so well. These characters are supposed to be a little silly, a little wacky, and you can't tell me he doesn't fit the bill. His annoyingness as a character was definitely intentional, but I don't think it was ever supposed to be in a way that makes Gabe unwatchable. He has so many hilarious and necessary moments on the show, like the whole thing with him pretending to be an Abraham Lincoln impersonator for the day. That's so good. And I think the main reason, or one of the main reasons that he's so funny, is because of the insanely talented Zach Woods. I think I've spent more time analyzing performances in recent years, and that's why I view Gabe kind of differently. That probably sounds kind of pretentious. I'm just a big Zach Woods fan, and I think that from watching this and a ton of his other work, it's immediately evident that he's a really funny guy. His ability to make Gabe the way he is just incredible, and I know you would probably argue that anyone can act like that sort of awkward guy, but I don't think that's true. Anyways, those of you who aren't the biggest Gabe Lewis fans, maybe just try appreciating Zach Woods as Gabe Lewis and see where you end up, look more into his comedic ability. It worked for me. Anyways, let's move on to our next contestant?
Oh, yes, I did. I told you all. It was, because that's an awful lot of money for me to forget. I forgot. I completely forgot.
One thing I cannot tolerate is hate for Nellie Bertram, and there's unfortunately a lot of it in the world. Now, I can already tell editing this portion is going to be a pain because there's maybe 2 clips on YouTube of this girl, so I apologize if you're stuck with just my face for longer than usual. Anyways, Nellie is once again someone I wouldn't expect to be your favorite, but I also don't see the point in totally despising her, because she very clearly grew to be a really good friend and member of the Office community. She didn't start out great. She seemed pretty unpleasant and just not good at her job, but at some point between seasons 8 and 9, she did become a much cooler lady. I think the writers just finally took it upon themselves to maybe humanize her a bit. She has a lot of really great moments with other characters. One of my favorite things is when she tricked Dwight into thinking he's on a radio show, and a bunch of other people in the office just kind of tore him apart. But one thing I like about Nellie that I also think really proves she's a good person is her friendship with Pam. Pam is honestly just a really nice person on her own. I think she showed sympathy for Nellie when no one else did. She tried to stop that welcome party from going wrong when the rest of the office hated her. She took her driving, she helped her with pranks, she opened up about like relationship issues. I think they had a really nice and maybe unexpected partnership that ended up being a really wholesome part of the show. Also, lastly, Nellie's strive to adopt a child was so sweet, and she put so much work into that, and it was just really cute, and it was really rewarding when she ended up with a baby in the finale, even if it wasn't through the means she intended. Ultimately, I think the majority of her time spent on the show was spent being a regular, friendly, and funny person, and I wish people would kind of reconsider her character, even if it's just in a season or plotline they don't love. Anyways, let's move on. Okay, Andy Bernard. Now, in comparison to Gabe and Nellie, Andy is undoubtedly essential to the show. He was made a series regular in 2007 and added to the opening credits in 2010. And because of this, I wasn't sure if this was someone I had to like defend, if most viewers consider him a staple of the show, but I've still heard a lot of people who really dislike him, or dare I say hate him, and I don't think that's great, and I want to talk about it because I thought he was a really awesome addition to the show. My defense of him is sort of a combination of my previous two arguments, because I, one, love Ed Helms and think his performance here is wonderful, but also two, think Andy is a pretty good guy who was just occasionally written poorly. That's my AirPod. Okay. In terms of Ed Helms being awesome, I think a good episode to watch is Andy's play, in which he performs Sweeney Todd. He's legitimately musically talented, so those aspects are pretty fun to watch, but he also displays a pretty wide range of emotions. You see his excitement for the show, and then his disappointment when things don't go his way. There are lots of good examples of his acting prowess, but that's just one I thought of. Anyways, looking at Andy as a character, he, pretty similarly to Nellie, developed into a much cooler guy than he was at the beginning. He started off as an annoying guy with anger issues, and he did sort of stay that way, but he also became a really good friend and boyfriend and employee until the writers decided that they hated him, I guess. I think one plot line that shows Andy's kindness pretty well is his wedding planning with Angela. I didn't really like them as a couple. She certainly treated him pretty badly and rejected a lot of his ideas for the wedding, but he was willing to do almost anything just to make her happy, including having their wedding at her ex's farm, so I think that's pretty commendable. Also, he was a really good manager. I was super happy when he got the job. I think a cool example of that was when he fought insanely hard to get the office that extended weekend for Columbus Day. You could tell the office really appreciated him for that, and it was a cute moment. Now, I know I have to acknowledge the incredibly upsetting choices Andy made in season 9 because they could easily erase every good thing I just said about him. He abandons the office and Aaron and returns as an absolute jerk, but I'm literally just gonna blame this on bad writing. It's not a good argument, I'm more than aware, but I don't even know how else to say it. They needed a reason for Andy to be gone for a bit because Ed Helms was like filming a movie or something, and they just chose to give him the worst possible storyline. I know it's very stupid for me to act like it didn't happen or like I know better than some of the best, most genius writers on television, but that's exactly what I'm gonna do, because I like Andy. That was the moral of all this. Should we continue? Okay, this would be the part in the video where the character I'm talking about says a funny little line, but this character has no funny little lines, so. Last up today, and I can already tell I'm gonna regret this a little, is Pete Miller. Now, I want to immediately start by saying that I was not happy when he and Clark were brought onto the show. Like, I don't think they needed to be there at all. That being said, Pete himself never really did anything wrong. I think it's totally valid to be upset about his addition to the cast, but otherwise I have no real reasons to dislike him outside of that. Clark was pretty creepy in my opinion, so I don't feel bad for not liking him as much, but I do want to tell you why I did enjoy Pete's presence. In the first couple episodes, he's really just a regular guy, but I think the moment that made me think differently about him was when he saved Aaron from Clark's little news anchor stunt. He hardly knew Aaron, but he still understood that what was going to happen was wrong, and it showed that he really cared about her in some way, and I think that's also why I ended up being okay with them being a couple. That's actually the next thing I wanted to talk about, because I don't think it's fair to say that Pete broke Aaron and Andy up. They definitely had a sort of romantic relationship going on when Aaron and Andy were still together, and I obviously would have preferred if that could have been avoided, But, as we discussed, Andy turned into a real jerk in season 9. He completely abandoned Erin, and she deserved a good guy who wanted to be with her, and that guy was Pete. Of course, in my imaginary little world where Andy never did all this, he and Erin definitely would have been endgame, but I think canonically, Pete was the right guy. He's nowhere near my favorite character. I can't even recall anything remotely interesting he did on the show, but I don't hate him either. I don't think he's deserving of any overwhelmingly negative response. So that's that. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. I definitely could have talked about a lot more characters in this video, so if anyone cares enough about this, I can come back to it at a later date, maybe. I guess I just see the good in everyone, or also I maybe just take all criticism very personally, even when it's not directed towards me at all. Who knows? But anyways, yeah, thank you so much for watching this. I know I shared some probably pretty unpopular opinions today, so I do appreciate you taking time to hear me out regardless. Also, I have Peacock now, so if you want to continue any discussions we had in this video today, you can let me know. I can look for certain scenes and episodes or whatever. Just leave a comment. You can also like or subscribe if you want. And yeah, I think I'm all done, so thank you very much for watching, and I will be seeing you. Bye! Anyways, Nelly's once again someone I wouldn't expect to be your... Oh my god. You know, this isn't my fault. I'm getting like 1,500 messages per second on Instagram right now. Okay.